Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now today I want to tackle a topic that I don't think I've ever covered before in over 1,800 interviews, and that's how human behaviour combined with technology and feed-based visuals will interact with TV advertising. So I invited Dan Greenberg, president of a company called Sharethrough, onto the podcast today, and they are one of the world's largest omnichannel exchanges. And Dan has his pulse on how businesses can ensure their ads are getting as many eyeballs as possible. And in particular, Dan also has some pretty strong thoughts on how our desire to read through feed-based visuals will inform the way we interact with advertising in the future, particularly when it comes to TV. He believes that the current catalogue-style homepage that most streamlined services have adopted will eventually become obsolete, and that adapting to the way that we consume other media through personalised feeds on channels like social will quickly become the norm. There's some real gold in this one today. And considering that streaming giants such as Netflix are reporting a slowing of subscriber growth, streamers do need to find a myriad of new ways to breathe life into their user experience. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to California, where Dan is going to share all this and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hey, Dan Greenberg, co-founder and former CEO, now president of Sharethrough. Our company was merged into a Canadian company, or I guess acquired by a Canadian company about a year ago. And so you've caught me at a really exciting moment of growth and expansion, both for the company and for myself. My background, just to take it kind of all the way back, I'm from the Bay Area. My whole life, grew up in Oakland, went to Stanford, so I was in Palo Alto for a handful of years, back to San Francisco, back to Berkeley. And so I say I've triangulated the Bay and really never left. I've traveled the world, and we've got customers and offices and other folks around the world, and have done my fair share of experiencing the world, but really have lived here my entire life. Meaning I've been kind of inundated in the mindset and the spirit of founderdom, the spirit of technology, the spirit of building, really my entire life here. Happy to talk through that today. I'm happy to talk through what makes me tick. Curious to hear your background as well. And obviously we can talk through programmatic advertising. We can talk through native. We can talk through the twists and turns in the media space today. I think maybe one frame I'll throw at you that I think really helps me see this space clearly is I like to look at micro changes in human behavior and how those lead to macro changes in society, in media, in marketing, and just in culture overall. So how micro changes in human behavior ladder up to macro changes feels like a really poignant way of looking at the world, and that's the way I've been seeing things these days with respect to video, changes in video behavior, with respect to changes in mobile behavior, and even just some small things that look like just small things you do with your thumbs, but then end up changing what it means to interact with content. It ends up changing what it means to think globally. Even the little small things you do with the mute button on the side of your phone can ladder up to the difference between a global media ecosystem and the way we experience TV fundamentally changing. So that's my quick intro, but sort of from an academic background into startup land. I'm a builder, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a founder, I'm an advisor, I'm an investor. And as you can tell here, I guess I'm a talker too. So maybe shut me up when it's time to turn off my mic.
Not at all. What I love about that is there's so much to unpack there, from triangulating the Bay, traveling the world, that spirit of technology, and being fascinated by those micro moments and the effects that they can have. So I've got to ask, where did that come from? What's your origin story? Can you remember that moment where that passion for tech came from and how all those worlds collided, and then especially with marketing thrown in as well? What was it that put you on this path?
Sure. So I don't have an 8-year-old origin story. When I was 8, I actually probably wanted to write sci-fi fantasy novels, and hopefully one day I get to do that in my life. But I'd say it really clicked during my college experience. I was always a builder. I was always a tinkerer. I was always learning about computers and the internet. And I remember I was trading stocks when I was 13 on E-Trade maybe or something like that, just like learning how the internet worked. And in some ways, I feel like I missed Web 1.0 in the whatever that was, 1997, 1998. I was like 13, 14.
Yeah.
And so I saw it happening, but I saw it as an observer, obviously, not as a builder. Though there's plenty of 14-year-olds in this day and age who are building true Web 2 or even Web 3 companies. So when it clicked for me, I think it was in college. I ended up doing so I graduated pretty quickly, and I ended up having a lot of flexibility in where I put my brain. And I did both on one side, actually, like some creative writing stuff and art program and photography stuff, but that's not super relevant for today's discussion, though maybe relevant for my childhood dream of writing sci-fi novels. But on the other side, dove into what's called what was then called the Persuasive Technology Lab at Stanford and is now called the Behavior Design Lab. It's led by this guy named BJ Fogg, who is just an inspiration to a lot of entrepreneurs and builders and thinkers. And the spirit of this lab, or maybe the seed crystal of this lab, was that if you can understand deeply how humans persuade other humans, which there's been hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years of research into. We know things like reciprocity. If I give you something, you want to give me something back. Social proof. If we're all looking up at the top of a building, obviously, as you walk past that crowd who's looking up at the top of the building, you're going to stop and look up too. And other people are doing it, I should do it too. So human-to-human persuasion is well understood. If you can take the things we understand with respect to human-to-human behavior change or human-to-human persuasion and replace one of those humans with a computer, if you can figure out how to distill down the strategies, the principles, I don't know what the word would be, but like the tactics, whatever, to use a computer to change someone's behavior, ideally for good, that you can make a lot of change in the world. Obviously, that can be used for bad and has been used for bad in plenty of ways. And we don't need to go down the path of fake news and the craziness that we're all going to pretend like didn't happen between whatever that was, 2016 to 2020. Fingers crossed for 2024. So ignoring like the social bad that can come out of computers persuading humans, there's a ton of opportunity to use it for good. And so I was in this lab. This lab was all about how do you use computers to persuade people to take their medicine on the right schedule, to go to class more often, to quit smoking cigarettes, things like that. It was a very Stanford sort of aspirational application of this concept of persuasive technology. And a lot of those concepts just seated deeply in my mind and my heart and my gut around, we do live in a digitally mediated world. We live in a technology world, and luckily it's still computers talking to humans, not just computers talking to computers. And so in a world where humans are designing computer programs and technology and systems that can persuade others, ideally for good, being able to harness the power of persuasive technology for positive behavior change, positive behavior design is a superpower. And so I spent a couple of years in that lab really diving deep into what are the triggers, what are the motivations, what are the ways to put together motivation and ability and trigger to drive behavior change. Very abstract academic thing to be throwing at you on a Tuesday evening. But then through that, like I said before, I guess, distilled down a few fundamental notions that we thought we could apply to, quote, the internet, quote, internet publishing, and I guess specifically advertising. There was an emergent thing happening back in 2007, 2008, which was the opening up of these platforms. Facebook opened the platform. MySpace back at the time opened the platform. Even YouTube was kind of the beginnings of a platform. And what me and my co-founders said at the beginning was, how can we apply persuasion strategies and behavior design strategies to build a better version of the internet that's not predicated on punch the monkey ads and banners in the corners and peripheral stuff that just gets in the way, but actually make the advertising fit the form factor of the site, make the advertising feel integrated to the site, make the advertising feel like it's content, not a traditional ad, and do that in a way that's designed with respect and designed from the sort of human-centric point of view. So a lot of what we do today is advertising for humans as opposed to spreadsheets, is the way I describe it. We're a technology company. Sharethrough is one of the largest global ad exchanges. So we do tons of different ad formats on tons of different platforms. But the through line for all of it is that it emerges from a standpoint of respect for the human, respect for the user, and it's built on this premise that if you respect the user will respect you back. If the brand respects a user, that user ideally, not always, but will be more likely to respect that brand back. Same with the publisher. I mean, if you go to those recipe sites, it's around Thanksgiving, you search for like Thanksgiving stuffing recipe. I guarantee that within 2 clicks, it'd be on one of those sites. It's got 3 video ads overlapping each other, a banner at the top, a full takeover of the page. You're trying to scroll through and find the recipe, and you can't even find it. That to me is a sign of change to come. That's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for publishing. It's not sustainable for branding. There's no value to having 3 videos overlapping each other on the same page. And so that's a challenge that still exists. This is not a solved problem. Sustainable publishing and a sustainable open internet is not yet a solved problem. But the mission of this company, born out of that academic background at Stanford around human-centric design, persuasion theory, behavior design, but the mission of this company, again, born out of that starting point, is still to create an ecosystem for sustainable. Let me try to put that differently. Like the mission of this company is to create a ecosystem for sustainable web publishing. If I'm a publisher today, and I'm committed to the craft of journalism, if I can't monetize that, and I can't get users to pay for that, and I can't monetize that with advertising, that ends up being an impossible profession. And so to me, I think it's pretty critical that we all figure this out, that if we don't have advertising models built on the foundation of respect for the user and for a long-lasting internet, we won't have open and accessible journalism. We'll have a few sites. We'll have the closed platforms of Facebook. Maybe Google will buy some of the last remaining media companies, or maybe you end up with just News Corp and Disney, and those are the only media companies in the world. But until you have a world where journalism can be sort of sustainably funded, I think it's on all of us to find a monetization model that can last.
Absolutely.
Again, I just threw a ton at you. Happy to unpack any angle of that.
It's so important and such a critical aspect of that industry now, because I don't know if you or anybody listening has tried to read an article on something like Forbes recently. You just can't get to the article. There's overlapping videos everywhere, and you end up clicking away, and somewhere someone's congratulating someone that their video had X amount of clicks. But the reality is, I'm thinking, I'm never going back to Forbes again, because I can't get the content that I went there for. But it is a problem. Something needs to change, and we need to figure that out. That's the
Agreed.
point.
It's kind of a sad problem too, because if you work at Forbes, and you're a journalist at Forbes, you're committed to the cause. You more than anybody are committed to the cause of creating content that hopefully moves people and that creates meaning in the world, and that the way that that's monetized today is unsustainable. And even forget about the feelings about all of it. If the advertising on those sites doesn't work, brands will stop paying for it. And if brands stop paying for the advertising on that site, the journalists who work for that site won't have the funding to continue to chug along and create meaning in the world. And so I really mean that when I say that the mission of this company, and my personal mission for the past 14 years now, has been to try to seed the foundation for a new monetization model for the internet, predicated on respect and trust and two-way design between brands and users, or publishers and users, maybe three-way design between all three, so that we can have an open and sustainable internet for independent journalism, for stories around the world, for content that moves meaning. I think without open and accessible content, you end up having a pretty different fabric of society.
Absolutely. And another thing, before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little bit of research on you. And don't worry, I didn't come across anything bad, but I did read that you led one of Stanford University's most successful courses on how to create viral branded videos, like the ones that you created for GM and Lego. But can you tell me more about those ads? And I know it's a pretty big question here and something that every brand everywhere in the world would love the answer to. But what would you say the secret is to creating a viral video?
I can speak about viral videos, but the class you're talking about at Stanford was actually more about viral app development. It was about K factors and about building viral loops, and then using that to both grow and then also create sustainable engagement for app developers, site developers. At the time it was Facebook app developers. So I'm happy to come back to the viral video stuff, but that's ancient history that I didn't really teach a class about viral videos, but I did teach a class about viral app development. And so I can speak to that a little bit.
Sure.
That actually came out of that lab that I was talking about. So this lab, the Persuasive Technology Lab, said, hey, we have all these theories that we've tested in labs, like white coat labs, 15 people doing a true real test on this concept of reciprocity or this concept of social proof or whatever. But what if we built a class to test these theories at scale? And so we ended up having a class, I think it had like 80 students in it across freshmen all the way through PhD students and everything in between. And it was all about how do you design essentially apps at the time, but apps is a catch-all for websites or programs or whatever other word you want to use. How do you design apps in Facebook at the time using these persuasion theories and to really test them? It was actually more of an academic class. And so the academic side of it was like, let's test these persuasion theories in the wild. The fast forward version of the story, which I guess I haven't told in a long time now, is that what started as building Facebook apps for academic purposes to test these theories emerged and evolved into a incubator. These homework assignments, which were little apps on Facebook, if you remember at the time, like send hugs to your friends and play a little mini game, and just like this stuff has faded away since then, but it was an early use case. It was using these Facebook apps to test these theories. They worked, and because they worked, a lot of them went viral, like academically, mathematically viral. K factor greater than 1. You send it to 100 people, and the next day there's 1,000. The next day there's 10,000. The next day there's 100,000. And I think through this class, I'm forgetting the stats now, so don't hold me to the exact stats, but order of magnitude, we had about 20 million people around the world using the homework assignments from this class. So 20 million people around the world were using these Facebook apps, sending gifts back and forth to their friends, doing rankings of things, putting in their favorite foods, like just all the silly stuff you would do in the early days of Facebook. And what was happening that ended up being the seed crystal for Sharethrough was that the students started to monetize them with Google ads. So they started to put banners on the apps. They'd have like 1 million people using their little game, and the students started to put in banner ads on those apps. This again is ancient history, but it's a fun story to tell. Yeah. There was a moment, probably like 8 weeks into this class, something like that, where this had been happening and we were aware of it. It was me, my now co-founder, and then the professor, BJ Fogg, really teaching the class. We all knew that they had built these apps that went viral. We all knew that there were people around the world using these, I call them homework assignments, but they're essentially Facebook apps, Facebook games, Facebook, whatever. And we knew that they were monetizing them because we knew they took those stupid little Google ads and put them all over the page, which is what you do. You have users using a website. What do? You put ridiculous Google ads on it, banners and boxes and punch the monkeys and ringtone scams and all that kind of ridiculous stuff that Google's engine is built on. And they put these ads on. And I remember this conversation, like, again, 7 or 8 weeks in, one of the students raised his hand and goes, "Hey, I have a question that I haven't really wanted to ask, but I feel like I need to now. Y'all know that we're putting these ads on our apps, and y'all know that like they're going viral and tons of people are using them. I don't think you know the order of magnitude of the money that we're making on these apps right now. And I wanted to tell you and also ask permission to keep the money," which was kind of funny because there are students in this class. And we said, "Well, what kind of money are you talking about?" He said, "Well, just my one app. There's 80 students, so they're probably like 30 groups and 100 apps that were built. My one app is making like $2,000 a day."
Wow.
I'm a student. Yeah. And somebody else says, there's like a ripple through the class. Like, yeah, we're making 3,000 a day. We're making 7,000 a day. Yeah, we're making 800 a day. We're making 2,000 a day. Again, off of ridiculous Google ads. Like, you know what these ads are like, just the
Yeah.
banners, the 300 by 250s, the 728 by 90s, the boxes that are all over the page that are so disrespectful to the user, but that's just how the internet works, like your Forbes example. And so it was this funny moment where we all realized, wait a second, this isn't just like a academic exercise in virality. This is an incubator. And so the class, first off, we got the Stanford patent office to say, yeah, you guys can keep whatever you want. This is your own thing. These aren't the next Googles. You can keep this. And so some of these students end up paying their tuition off of the homework assignments from this class, which is ridiculous. But we ended up evolving it into more of an incubator. So we brought some VCs in to help coach these kids. And I was a kid at the time too. What is the world of venture capital like? And what would it be like to raise money? What would it be like to go build a business? Is this the seed of a business? Some of these were acquired. So companies like RockU and Zynga and Slide, I think were the three big ones at the time, actually acquired some of these things for legitimate money that paid people's tuitions. And then this was like a one-time class. It happened one time. The internet also moved on. The internet always moves on. And so the Facebook app ecosystem was kind of shut down by Facebook in, I think, 2010 or so. But the seeds were still true and the seeds were planted. And there's kind of a generation of students and people that came out of that, both that class, but also that lab, that had this idea in their mind that you can move meaning through the world and you can create virality. I don't love the word virality, but used this way, like truly virality with like a K factor of greater than 1. If that's interesting, go to Google, type in K factor virality, and there's a ton of academic articles about it. But there's a whole group of people who've gone on to build really meaningful, important companies. Even the Instagram founders came out of this lab, and so there's a lot of goodness in the world if you can harness the power of behavior design for good. I don't know. I covered a ton of stuff again just there. So please stop me halfway along the way if you want to stop me.
And I suspect that the kids now here in 2021, they're paying the tuition with cryptocurrency gains, I would imagine, because if you need to work out how to get your head around, let's say, Binance Smart Chain, or how to transfer and buy things on PancakeSwap, you go on YouTube, it's a 13, 14-year-old that will walk you through how to do it. So I wonder if that's happening now.
I'm sure there is. And I've been learning a ton about Web3 as well. Crypto is just one angle into Web3.
Yeah.
We probably need to have a whole nother podcast. We can circle back around on that later. But there's a lot of fundamental change that's happening on the internet right now. I mentioned before I was 13, 14 when Web 1 happened. Web 2 I lived, and Web 2 I built. And Web 2, Sharethrough is a Web 2 programmatic advertising company built around social, built around feeds, built around content, built around new monetization models. Web 3 is a whole new construct.
Yeah.
Will there even be advertising in Web 3? I don't know. I think it still remains to be seen. There will be branding. There will be marketers who are in the mix, but will it be stickers on pages? Probably unlikely. I think it will be more about integrations and invitations to build together and communities. And Nike will apply to a community to ask if they can buy the token and fund the community and participate. As opposed to Nike saying, I want you, and I'm going to buy ads on your page, and I'm going to put my stuff, all over your page. I think the Web3 construct is going to change. It's going to be communities inviting brands into their mix to be authentic, to be participants, to be builders with them. So maybe that's a preview of a Web3 conversation we can have.
Yeah,
but there's 100%. A DAO conversation to have. There's an NFT conversation to have. There is the crypto part, but the crypto part is just, again, one leg of the stool.
Yeah.
NFTs and DAOs being the other two legs of the stool. And I think collectively they're all incredibly interesting. Decentralized finance combined with this creator movement, and the NFT movement, which is so huge in terms of gaming and art and creators and more, combined with DAOs, which is an entirely new construct for a business, from a C Corp to an S Corp to an LLC to now a DAO. There's something happening in the air that is pretty foundational, and we're lucky to be living it and learning it right now.
100% with you on that. I think we will have to get you back on next year to go through some of that stuff. But when you very first came on the podcast, you were talking about your fascination with micro behaviors and how they can impact things. I know you've done considerable research on human behavior trends. So can you tell me a little bit more about how those trends combined with technology can make a real difference in your work?
Sure. I mean, why don't we take one specific example? There's tons of different micro human behavior changes, but the one I've been paying attention to lately is with respect to video and changes with the way people are sort of consuming video and what it even means to, quote, watch a video in this day and age. Yeah. What video used to mean was sight, sound, and motion. And what video used to mean was like full screen, sound on, sitting on the couch, watching it. And I don't have to say this, it's obvious it's not that anymore. Either you're sitting on the couch with your phone in your hand and you're looking at your phone while the TV's in the background. Maybe you're watching something on your computer while you're also working at the same time. The idea of watching video has changed so much, but the specific micro behavior that I think ends up leading to a lot of macro changes, and stick with me on this logical thread, is that because we're watching things on mute these days, almost always, like almost everything we watch other than just a TV show is on mute. Because we're on mute and because we never touch that little mute button on the side of your phone. I don't know when the last time was that you touched this, but like that side of your phone, that little flip that goes from mute to unmute, I haven't touched that in months.
Yeah,
I mean,
me too.
This is a new phone. I maybe have never touched that on this phone other than when I got the phone to turn it from sound on to sound off. And so the way we're consuming content now, unless you're watching a full screen show where you put your phone down and you put your hands in your lap and you watch a show, it's almost always on mute. We've done a bunch of research on that. You can know it anecdotally. It's almost always on mute. Because it's on mute, what that means is that it's not just sight, sound, and motion anymore. It's also reading. The way we consume this content now, you see it on Instagram, you see it on TikTok, you see it on YouTube, is just reading captions, reading subtitles. In Instagram, it's reading the header and then reading the comment thread while you're watching, plus also text on top of the video itself. In TikTok, even though it is full screen, a lot of time it's mostly just muted with text on top of it. And because of that, which again seems like a small change, micro behavior change, because of that, what it means is that the way that we consume TV has also started to change. I don't know if I don't know what your stat is, but the stat is about 50% of people watch TV with subtitles on now, even with the sound on, subtitles on. And that's because you're so used to it. Your brain says, hey, when I'm watching video, I can't even comprehend this without text. I'm just used to watching videos with text. Yeah. And so even though I'm listening to dialogue, I kind of need the text to make sense of it. I need to follow along with the part of my brain that's reading. And what that does, I'm going to take this to a macro level, which I think is pretty exciting, is it means that shows like Money Heist, it means shows like Squid Game, it means a whole world of quote foreign directors, which is a very American-centric way of looking at the world, but non-English shows, non-English directors can actually move meaning through content in a way that doesn't feel like, a foreign film. But I'm just reading anyway, so what do I care if they're speaking in English or speaking in Korean or speaking in Spanish? I'm reading the text anyway. And it unlocks a whole global playing field of global creators and global content creators, where because text has become so integral to watching a video, it levels the playing field in a lot of ways, which to me is pretty cool. And secondly, the other macro change I would say is that when you look at the way that you watch stuff on your phone these days, you're not usually going to YouTube and searching for a show and then clicking play and then putting your phone down and watching it for 30 minutes. Usually you're bouncing through feeds and you're tapping through stories. And if the way that we're consuming video these days is stories from friends and stories from influencers and stories from yourself, watching your own story again, you made a story, it's your kids eating breakfast, you watch it again. So when you pick up your phone, you're watching yourself and you're watching your network. The definition of the quote network is not CBS, ABC, NBC anymore. The network is my friends. The network is my network that I chose. And so my prediction is that pretty soon when you open up your TV, it's not going to just be a section for movies and a section for TV, movies and shows. I think there'll be a third category, like a third meta level category. You open up your TV, this dumb black screen on the wall, and instead of it just being a VHS tape that you put into the TV to watch, Quentin Tarantino's movie, or you watch some ABC TV show. You actually are plugging into the internet to connect to your network. And so there should be 3 top level categories. You open up your TV and you're looking at movies, you're looking at TV shows, and you're looking at stories. And depending on your mood, maybe you want to go, brain off, sit on the couch quietly and watch a movie. Amazing. But maybe you wanted to like fluidly take the behavior you're already doing in your hand, which is tapping through stories, and just move those stories to the TV and tap through stories on TV the same way you would on your phone. That's still TBD. That's more of a prediction for me about the way the world may turn. But it makes sense. You've got this incredibly smart, really dynamic, and human connected thing in your hand, and then this ridiculous black screen on the wall. Yeah. And that black screen on the wall is already connected to the internet. It's just a user experience layer, a UX layer that's missing to be able to take that sort of human experience I have on my phone and bridge it to TV so that my TV actually becomes a big phone. And I think if my TV becomes a big phone, that's also kind of how you enter this metaverse, that like it's just one hyper integrated, meta level of technology. And sometimes you look at your screen on your phone, sometimes you look at your screen on your watch, sometimes you look at your screen on the wall. Today, the TV is not really an access point to the metaverse, but it surely will be in short order.
I think you're bang on the money there. And the thing regarding the foreign films there, I think you're so right. I was not in agreement with everything that you're saying, but I'll be honest with you, I'd never thought of it before you mentioned it. But looking back now, you're absolutely right. And talking about the personalised feeds on TV becoming the norm too, again, incredibly interesting, especially with streaming giants such as Netflix beginning to report slower subscriber growth now. So do you think those big streaming companies will need to find new ways to breathe life into their user experience? Because it's our expectations and what we're almost demanding, isn't it?
I think so. I'm just one millennial with one point of view here. Though we've done some research, and so some of this is backed up by human behavior research, but more micro behavior research. But just even think about the language we use. I published an article about this last week, but just the language, like it's the newspaper, turn on the radio, turn on the TV, but it's my phone. I would never say like, hand me the phone. Like, what do you mean? You want me to take a time machine to 1992 and hand you the dial-up phone? What do you mean the phone? It's my phone. Hand me my phone. Like, don't touch my phone. It's my phone because it's almost an extension of my physical body. It's like, this is half of my brain. This is where my network resides. And when I open my phone, I'm not only opening a portal to Google, to like the information of the world, really I'm opening a portal to my network. I mean, when I open my phone, I think you have to be a psychopath to just go to open your phone and go to google.com. Who does that? Nobody does that. Okay, what do I want to learn today? Google.com. I want to learn about trees. No, you open your phone and you go to either your email, which is a feed of communication with your network. You go to Instagram, you go to Facebook, you go to Pinterest, you go to TikTok, you go to LinkedIn. It's an access point to your network, and it's an access point to your feed. And so my prediction here is that concept of my feed being my network and my curated list, not just friends, but of influencers I follow and quasi celebrities I follow, and hey, even businesses that I choose to follow, my feed ends up being my anchor for my metaverse. And if my TV is just a VHS player for somebody else's 2-hour movies and 30-minute TV shows, I'm just not going to use it that often. I'm going to use it because it is, I love movies, I love TV, and people are spending still a ton of time watching movies and TV. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's going to be wildfire the minute you can turn on your TV and have it feel like an extension of your phone, and then it becomes my TV. Like, I'm going to watch my TV, or maybe it's just going to be my feed. I want to see my feed is on my TV. That to me will be a turning point where the Netflix, Amazons, Hulus of the world won't just be like Hollywood creators who dump content on the masses, but there'll be access points to your own metaverse and access points to your own feed, access points to your own network, especially for the Gen Z and the Gen A or whatever the next generation is going to be called. They don't open their phone to look at other people's stuff. They open their phone to look at themselves. And themselves is not just pictures of their own face. themselves now means their network. I open my phone to look at myself and my people and my network and my Instagram and my content, my feed. The TV, I think, will be a foreign concept to Gen A. Like, why would you ever have something on the wall that's somebody else's stuff? Where's your stuff? Like, I want a TV that's got my stuff on it.
Yeah.
And if Hollywood wants to dump some stuff on me sometimes, cool, I'm interested in that. But I'd actually rather even like experience it with my network. I'd rather experience it through my network, not just like a TV guide from 1999.
Man, before I came on this call with you today, I was kind of frustrated and fed up of the old way of doing things and mainstream media and how outdated it is. But I feel somewhat inspired now. But I'm curious, what does that mean for Sharethrough? What's your big focus going to be in 2022 and beyond? And what excites you about the road ahead?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's coming back to this human-centric design principle. Mm-hmm. We are an omni-format, omni-channel ad exchange, and I guess a global ad exchange now too. I think we're the top 6, something like that, top 6, top 7 largest just global ad exchange across traditional formats, new formats, native video, soon to be connected TV, and more. So it's bridging the concept of human-centric design to whatever there is to come, to each new format, to each new channel, and bridging the idea of advertising born out of respect and integrated advertising and higher quality advertising and advertising as utility, advertising as content. You're not always going to get to that, but it's definitely an aspiration. So our product roadmap and our company's roadmap is about sort of bridging into the future, but with a design principle that starts with humans. That's kind of abstract, but concretely it means new connected TV ad formats. It means new audio formats, new out-of-home formats, new, whatever, wherever we go. And I can't spill the beans on like the whole product roadmap here, but from channel to channel, from format to format, bridging forward with respect for the human, I think is critical.
100% with you on that. And we started the podcast today talking about your origin story. We've also looked into the future and what we can expect on the horizon. But I'm now going to have a bit of fun with you and ask you, what's been the soundtrack to your career and your life on your phone, of course? What is there a particular song that has stuck with you, something that helps you get your head in the zone before going on stage or landing a big meeting? What would your song be and why? And we'll add that to our Spotify playlist.
Well, for a long time now, the only song on my phone has been Talking Heads' "This Will Be the Place," or "This Must Be the Place." Sorry, Talking Heads' "This Must Be the Place" has just been a soundtrack in my mind for years. Why? I don't know. Something about it just has the right energy and the right crystal that gets my brain flowing. So yeah, it's like, for some reason, the only song on my phone, obviously Spotify, but like anytime my phone takes over the car or whatever else, that's like the only song that plays, or the only song that plays on a phone alarm or something like that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, classical music is definitely the background of my life. But yeah, I mean, if you're gonna put a song on the Spotify, Talking Heads, "This Must Be the Place."
Yeah, absolutely. That's got to go on there. I saw David Byrne a couple of years ago when he did that solo tour. It was more theatre than a gig. It was just out of this world. One of the best gigs I've ever seen in my life. So I'll proudly put that one on the Spotify playlist. For anyone listening wanting to find out more information about you, you mentioned a great article a moment ago. I think a few people want to check that out. So if you can tell me where that is, I'll post a link. And also the best way of finding more information about anything we talked about today and finding Sharethrough online. What's the best starting point?
Yeah, well, that article I'm talking about is on the Sharethrough blog. Yeah, sharethrough.com/blog. It's got a ton of different content, but that recent one's about how the feed will transform what it means to watch TV, and how this discussion today about the feed will emerge into our TV user experience. To find me, I am at @dgreenberg on Twitter. It's probably the best way. DMs are open. Follow me, find me. I'm happy to jam with people on business design, creative design, behavior design, ad tech, wherever your head's at.
Awesome. And not only that, I think we're going to have to get you back on the podcast next year. Talk about Web 3.0, but I think even that is a multiple episode on its own too. But before we go,
a lot to be talked about there. We're definitely at the beginnings of a moment. So thanks for calling that out.
No problem at all. Well, more than anything, I think your human story and your passion for this subject certainly inspired me and left me walking away from this podcast thinking about a few things differently. And that is the beauty of these shows and why I record them every day. But more than anything, Dan, just thanks for sitting down and sharing that with me today.
Right on. Great to meet you.
Dan really got me thinking today about how the current catalogue style homepage that most services have adopted will eventually become obsolete, and how they're all going to have to adapt to how we consume media through all those personalised feeds on so many different social channels now, and that will become the norm. It's the channel of us. So how do you see the future, though? I'm going to invite everybody listening to gaze into their crystal balls and share with me how you think the landscape is going to change. So as always, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn at Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk, where you'll find over 2,000 podcast interviews and a whole heap of ways you can work with me if hearing my voice 7 days a week is not enough for you. But that's it for today, so a big thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.